Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. We're taking your calls at 855-236-3228. That's 855-236-3228. Shane in Delaware, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Shane.
Hey, Ben. Thank you for taking my call. Before I get into the question, I just want to tell your thumbnail team I'm not a communist or a socialist, so if you destroy me, don't put it in the thumbnail.
Okay,
but,
we'll try not to. No promises, Shane, but we'll try not to.
I wanted to ask you, do you ever see if there's any way capitalism could maybe exploitate people in the third world, maybe like people like Nike that use sweatshop labor? And do you think that conservatives sometimes maybe shy away from the problems capitalism can bring, just so we don't maybe give some credence to maybe communism or socialism?
Well, so one of the problems that you have in third world countries is typically that the regime in charge is not engaging in capitalism; they're engaging in corporatism or state, what people wrongly term state capitalism, meaning that they are already imposing tremendous restrictions on their workers. They're deciding which people can go into which lines of work. They're restricting trade tremendously. So that's not a problem with capitalism. That's a problem with the inherent regime. So, for example, you start a sweatshop, a so-called sweatshop in China. Well, China is dictating the labor that can be provided to that sweatshop, and they are cramming down rates specifically because they wish people to invest in sweatshops in China. If China were free, then presumably you wouldn't be able to pay people these unbelievably low rates of labor low rates of pay in order to pay them to do the job. So that's not a problem with capitalism. That's a problem with China not being capitalist enough. Now, is it true that there are profit-seeking companies that take advantage of that sort of thing? Yeah, absolutely. But that calls for more capitalism, not less. It means that you would hope that China would become more capitalist, not less. So I think what people do is they tend to mislabel the problem as a capitalist problem as opposed to a profit-seeking problem. You see this a lot in American business too, Shane. So one of the things that you see is big companies that will work with government to achieve a monopoly. Right? This does happen a lot, right? They'll get regulations drawn that specifically make it harder for people to enter a given industry. And people will say, well, look at capitalism at work. It's like, nope, that's not capitalism. That's a corporation engaging in so-called regulatory capture. It is the opposite of capitalism, which is about free markets and free labor and free movement of people and goods. So anything that cuts against that is actually a problem with the opposite of capitalism. As far as the notion that people who are seeking to pay extraordinarily low wages in a climate of non-compulsion. So let's say that you have an excess of labor, right? This is how you would get a low wage, right? You have an excess of labor in a particular area. So you have a lot of people who are capable of sewing socks. And now you only have to pay people a very small amount of money in order to sew socks. Now, presumably, if that's their only job, you're still going to have to pay them enough to live on, because otherwise they literally would not be able to take the job. But the case for capitalism, even in that case, would be that if the alternative is that those jobs just don't come to that area, then the alternative is unemployment, not a higher wage. So people never look at the alternative to people earning a wage that they don't like, which may be them not earning a wage at all, which is one of the reasons why you see folks on the left constantly pushing the idea of minimum wages, neglecting the fact that when you raise the wages arbitrarily, what you end up doing is helping people who get to retain their job, but hurting everybody else who just lost their job, Shane.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Yeah. I totally agree with everything you just said. What else was I going to say? Crap, I forget.
Oh, no worries,
but
Shane.
Do you think that companies that, like, Matt Walsh addressed this on his show a couple of days ago. He said that sometimes conservatives, people that are really pro-free market, like people like you and I, maybe not you, but sometimes like people that very pro-capitalist, they sometimes don't like to point out the greed that some billionaires have. Like Matt Walsh kind of said, okay, if you have $8 billion, you could have 3 houses or something like that. But we have to say that's kind of greedy. You could give that to give that money to the poor, obviously.
Yeah, so I fundamentally disagree with Walsh on this point.
That?
I don't think that it's greedy for you to use your money basically however you legally can. And I don't think it's immoral for you to buy an extra house from somebody, which raises real estate prices and does employ people. I think that the notion that you owe the money back to some sort of common fund, I don't think is correct. Like, listen, I would prefer that people give more charity. I should give more charity. I give a fair bit of charity, but I should certainly give more charity. I think it's a good thing to do. I think that it's great that people like Bill and Melinda Gates, they just gave $100 million to coronavirus research. Like, all of that is wonderful, but I don't think that there's anything morally wrong with you consuming products that are produced by somebody else in a free exchange. Now, maybe if you are a quote unquote more moral person, then you give more of your money to charity, but that's not something that can be compelled. And the default, which is that you don't have to give your money to charity, doesn't make you a bad person. I don't think that you're a bad person just because you bought an expensive car. I think that you're a bad person if you stole the expensive car. I think you're a bad person if you demand that you have to put your hand in somebody else's pocket. So in other words, there are gradations of morality. Let's say the highest level of morality is that you're an absolute saint. You earn enormous amounts of money through free exchange, and then you give away an enormous amount of money. Like, great. I think that is the highest level. Then there is the second highest level, which is you engage in business. You have created an enormous number of jobs. You made an enormous number of people's lives better. And then you don't give that much charity. Right? That's not great. That's not quite as great as you giving the charity, but it's still pretty great. I mean, you did create an enormous amount of wealth for an enormous number of people. And then there's the third level, which is the worst, which is you just try to take everybody else's money. And that, of course, is actively bad.
Certainly. I definitely agree with you on everything you just said. I mean, I think people, like, when they see people like these billionaires with, a lot of assets, houses, cars, and stuff like that, they think that they inherently stole it from another person because they don't have something. Because someone that's poor might not have a house or a car. But, like, again, like, the only other option would be have the government redistributing things, and that's no good.
Right. Again, obviously. I mean, we can urge people to be more generous with the wealth that they earn, but it is their wealth. And by the way, this is the great lie about charity. Charity does less for the world than free markets. It does. Foreign aid does less for the free world, has done significantly less for the global economy. And for poor people, foreign aid, right, which is direct charity, does far less for poor people than free market capitalism. Bill Gates has done more good for the world in creating Microsoft than he has through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And he's given an awful lot of charity. The amount of good that he's done for the world in creating hundreds of thousands, if not millions of jobs, in making businesses across the globe more efficient, in creating supply chains across globally, that's been significantly better for humanity than if Bill Gates had just been handed $1 billion and he hadn't given it all to charity. Shane, really appreciate the call. Kyle in North Carolina, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Kyle.
Hey, Ben. Just first want to say I'm glad that you enjoyed my Epstein comments at the end of yesterday when I called in. Anyways, I watched the State of the Union address last night, the Daily Wire show and everything. Honestly, I thought the speech was just phenomenal, as all you guys were talking about. I was wondering where in I thought the speech was really, really good. I was wondering where you think that speech ranks in the all-time presidential speeches.
So in terms of all-time best presidential speeches, I think you have to think in 50 years, are people going to read the speech? So the answer typically for State of the Unions is no. It's very rare that you have a State of the Union address that actually ranks among best presidential speeches. Typically, there has to be some sort of inciting event that makes people kind of aware that the speech is important. So first of all, I think that Trump's his most memorable speech was actually the speech that he gave in Warsaw talking about the defense of Western civilization. In terms of historic speeches, you're thinking Washington's farewell address, maybe the first and second Abraham Lincoln inaugural addresses, the Gettysburg Address, JFK's, his speech in Berlin, the JFK speech about going to the moon, right? The speeches that have a specific topic that aren't typically sort of State of the Union addresses are the ones that are the most memorable. MLK's speeches, obviously. The Washington Mall speech. And those are the ones that people are going to remember. Do I think that this ranks among the all-time best presidential speeches? I'll put it top of the second tier, right? I mean, I think there's a huge second tier, like an enormous second tier of good presidential speeches that people don't remember. But does it list in my top 10? No. Does it list in my top 20? Probably not. Is it the second best speech that Trump has ever given? Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, really appreciate the call. We'll get to more of your calls momentarily. But first, let us talk about the earbuds that you are currently using to listen to the show. So, are you using the earbuds that have the wires attached to them, and now they are all tangled up in your pocket, like the ones I'm talking about right now? And you're going to have to pull them out of your pocket. You're going to have to untangle them. It's a pain in the butt. Or do you have the one-size-fits-all earbuds that don't actually stick in your ear when you go jogging, when you go running, or even when you're just moving around the house? Maybe what you need is a great pair of earbuds that are going to be made to fit your ear. I mean, they actually have a variety of fits. I'm talking about Raycon's wireless earbuds. They have no stems. They don't have any of the wires attached, and they come in a variety of colors. And as I say, they provide a variety of fits. Raycon has just released their best model yet, the E25. They have 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and more compact design that gives you a nice noise-isolating fit. Raycon's wireless earbuds are incredibly comfortable, perfect for on-the-go listening and for taking phone calls. Unlike some of your other wireless options, Raycon earbuds are both stylish and discreet. Again, no dangling wires, no stems, and you get a variety of fits and a variety of color choices. Get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/Ben. That's at BUYRAYCON.com/Ben for 15% off Raycon wireless earbuds. Buyraycon.com/Ben. Right, taking your phone calls at 855-236-3228. Savion in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Savion.
Hey, Ben, how's it going? My question, I guess, was a little bit more of a philosophical one. I have one of my best friends, and we talk and have a lot of great intellectual conversations. And one of the things we talk about a lot is abortion. And he disagrees with me on abortion. I agree with you on abortion that, life begins at conception. And when you have a zygote, that's unique DNA to that human being, and we can't destroy it. My question was, do you think it's okay to consider someone your best friend if you fundamentally agree on moral or ethical issues?
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with fundamentally disagreeing on moral or ethical issues. I just don't think that I would take them as a moral guide. I think that having friendships with full knowledge and clarity about exactly the basis for the friendship makes a lot of sense. Now, I would assume that there are certain moral issues on which you guys agree that are even more bedrock than, like abortion's a pretty bedrock issue for me. But apparently there are some things that you agree on, presumably, which is what makes you friends. So, for example, you probably agree on the value of disagreement. Right, which is a pretty basic one. Because if you didn't agree on that, presumably you couldn't be friends, right? He'd be chiding you all the time about being a sexist or something. Presumably you agree on sort of the nature of how conversations should go, and so you enjoy those conversations. Now, so I think it's harder to have lifelong friendships with people who fundamentally disagree with you on the nature of morality. I do. I think it is more difficult. I think that over time, people tend to sort into ideologically like-minded groups, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that people want to hang out typically with people it's easier for them to hang out with. And you don't want to constantly feel pressured by people who are telling you that you're an immoral jackass all the time. But does it make you a hypocrite? I don't think it makes you a hypocrite. Nobody says you can't be friends with people you disagree with.
Right, but saying like the philosophical definition, I guess, of like a friend, if you're friends with somebody, it should be somebody, I guess, who you're like-minded with and agree with on a lot of things. Would you be friends with somebody who's okay with, if you consider abortion murder, and they're murdering someone, it's like, can you call somebody a friend if you consider them a murderer?
I mean, listen, I would have a difficult time spending enormous amounts of time, hanging out with people who think that I am a sexist because I believe in protection of life. I am friends with people who are pro-choice to a certain degree, right? Who recognize the validity of my argument and disagree with it. That's something that is going to happen every day in American politics, and I think that probably that's a good thing. I mean, we should be talking to each other. If we can't talk to each other, we got a problem in American politics. I will admit, my definition of friendship is pretty loose, right? I think that people tend to break down into two categories: friends people and family people. I'm definitely a family person, meaning I have like 2 or 3 very close friends, and I have my family, and that's it. I do not have a broad circle of acquaintance. I don't tend to spend time with people outside of my family. Like, my best friend is my business partner. We haven't gone out to dinner in 11 years. Like, we don't go out to dinner. I'd rather be with my wife and my kids. He knows that, right? He's more of a social animal. I am not a social animal in that way. So my definition of friendship may be looser, like people all have a conversation with. But if you're talking about like a friend who you hang out every minute of every day with because, you guys are besties and you want to spend all the time that you can together, I don't think it makes you a hypocrite. I admire the nature of your friendship such that you're willing to overlook basic moral disagreements in order to spend time with the person. That'd be uncomfortable for me on a personal level.
Okay, and I definitely agree with you that we all grow and, your mind expands and grows by you having conversations with people that you disagree with. That definitely leads to more compromise or more of you guys being on the same wavelength or learning from each other. So it's definitely good to be around people that you disagree with, but I really do appreciate it.
Well, Savion, really appreciate you listening, and thanks so much for the call. We'll get to more of your calls at 855-236-3220.